Good afternoon, everyone. This is Mike O'Malley here with the Hurricane Outlook and discussion for June 10th, 2022, around 2:20 p.m. Eastern Time. We have a lot to talk about today, including multiple tropical cyclone threats for portions of Mexico over the next week, and a look at more tropical development that could be possible in the Atlantic over the next several days. And just how busy could this 2022 Atlantic hurricane season get? Well, let's go ahead and find out. Taking a wide look across the tropical Atlantic this afternoon, we notice that the Atlantic basin is relatively quiet. We do have a few tropical waves that are moving through the basin at the moment. We have a tropical wave approaching Barbados and the Lesser Antilles. No threat for development, just some isolated rain and thunderstorms there, much needed. And then we also have a tropical wave coming off of Africa right now. This is all confined to the intertropical convergence zone, which is pretty far south right now because it is still very early in the season. This will begin to move northward as we progress later through the season, and you'll get these tropical waves that come off at a much higher latitude. We also have in the East Pacific Basin a tropical system that will be designated Invest Area 92E within the next few days. This area will have a high probability of development. We can take a look at that right now. This is the formation outline area for 2 p.m. this afternoon, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And again, we can see that this system is located right around here, and it is moving generally off towards the west or northwest here. And this will kind of just be meandering around in this area over the next several days or so before it goes on to develop. And there does seem to be some risk, especially around coastal Mexico here, southeast of the Baja California Peninsula. And this seems like that it could go on to become a tropical storm or even a hurricane over the next several days. And so we take a look at that here in the GFS forecast. This is the 12Z run of the GFS valid for 2 p.m. this afternoon. We're looking at the 850 millibar vorticity or spin in the atmosphere at about 5,000 feet off the ground. So all of these darker oranges and reds, that's your higher cyclonic spin and a stronger cyclone. Well, what we can tell here on the GFS is that we actually kind of get a system to start developing by Sunday morning. It seems like we have kind of a broad area of low pressure Saturday into Sunday, and then this begins to tighten up in rather quick order and becomes seemingly a pretty strong, healthy tropical cyclone or even a hurricane by Tuesday as it approaches Mexico here. And again, this is generally moving northward because there is not as strong of a ridge over the desert southwest. And this is actually allowing for a stronger storm to kind of drift northward over the next several days or so. And eventually we can see here that even though there's a little bit of a gap, but we can see that the storm does intensify rather quickly here in rather quick order and becomes a pretty intense cyclone at this point. Now, the upper level environment, according to the GFS, is going to be at least somewhat favorable. We can tell that at least initially there will be some shear in the region, but at least it is able to kind of clear out. But there still be some because there's a upper level high here, and there is still some shear kind of impinging on this system. If we take a look here at the European, the 0Z Euro is kind of in agreement here with a storm that ends up tightening up here on Wednesday and moving inland near Mexico with another storm forming behind here. And it seems like there could be at least 2 or 3 more storms that form out in this region in the Eastern Pacific. And a couple of these could be land concerns over the next week to 10 days, if not a little bit more. So we'll have to watch that with time. The European ensembles, again, kind of showing the same thing along with the GFS ensembles. Bottom line, there seems to be a threat here for portions of coastal Mexico. Now, on the Atlantic side, everything is quiet for now. We will be watching what could be developing over the next several days out in this part of the world. There could be a mesoscale convective system that kind of dives down over the open waters, and this may develop into a tropical cyclone as it approaches Florida here over the next several days, or kind of meanders around in the southwestern Atlantic. So there's 2 kind of probabilities there for a tropical cyclone in the Atlantic side of everything, but that is well into next week, so we'll kind of leave the speculation for that. But this is something that I did find interesting here. This is really looking at all of the positive Atlantic multi-decadal oscillation patterns and AMA patterns. Just a big fancy way of saying that we could be in for a very rough season this year. This is created by somebody that I know, Eric Webb here, and very smart guy who works government meteorology. But basically, what is being shown here is that we have the potential for major hurricanes and even low-end tropical storms to be impacting the Caribbean this year, portions of the Bahamas, Florida, South Carolina. It definitely seems like we have an abundance here in this part of the world, and that could definitely go to support the idea that we've kind of been thinking that this year could be a particularly active season. We were talking yesterday about how that could be a blend of 2020 and 2017. Both of those years were very, very dynamic years in their own right. But if we look here at the sea surface temperature pattern from yesterday, we notice that, again, we're very well entrenched within a La Nina pattern, and we have kind of a positive IOD, Indian Ocean dipole. Basically, what this really is just basically a way of saying that convection is favored over this part of the world right here. And this is actually more favorable for Atlantic tropical cyclone activity because it suppresses the air out in this region and increases rising air over here, but does not increase rising air like we saw in 2020. The rising air was just too much. It was too favorable. And that is a thing. And so with the upward moving air being slightly displaced away from Africa, this actually helps the Atlantic produce more tropical cyclones. And we also have this developing positive phase 1 AMO pattern. We've been talking about that over the last several days. And again, just a big fancy way of saying that the main development region is primed and ready for development. And in the Gulf of Mexico, in the Southwest Atlantic, and the Caribbean, water temperatures are already spicy warm at this point. Water temperatures about 27 to 29 Celsius, depending on where you're at. But again, pretty much everywhere in the Southwest Atlantic and Caribbean and Gulf is now more than favorable for Atlantic tropical cyclones at this point. Now, going into the future here, this is looking at a climate forecast model. This is the CAN-SIPS forecast. And really what this shows here is the precipitation anomalies over the kind of averaged out over the next several months. And we'll move this to the peak of the hurricane season by August, September, and October. We notice how there's quite an abundance of above average precipitation anomalies in the main development region and the Caribbean. This goes to suggest that we could be dealing with some quite active, at least precipitation above the long-term average. Now, this doesn't necessarily imply, it's not an implicit tropical cyclone track forecast, but this definitely goes to show that there's above normal confidence that this area will be having more moisture and typically could lead to a surplus of tropical cyclones. And there's also something here that's very interesting. Over a 3-month period, these shear anomalies for August, September, and October are expected to be relatively minimal in this area. So the deep tropics look open for business as we head towards the peak of the season here, and certainly goes to support some very intense storms. Now, we made a forecast back on June 1st about what we could be experiencing for this season, and just to kind of recap that, my feelings on this really have not changed. About 20 named storms at this point that seems like a reasonable forecast, with about 7 hurricanes and about 3 to 4 of them being major hurricanes. So I definitely go to see that this could be a pretty active hurricane season this year, and it certainly would not surprise me if we end up with over 20 named storms by the time we get to the end of the season. And like I said back on June 1st, there's at least a 22% chance of a hyperactive season. And I think this number, I'm going to redo my forecast by July 1st. And I think this number is going to have to be increased given the recent trends here within the overall models and in real time. So with that being said, make sure to go follow me on Twitter at MikeRomali1. I'll be posting all sorts of updates on there. That's kind of where you can go to get the most up-to-date information, 24 hours really. All right, with that being said, hope you have a great rest of your afternoon and evening. Of course, I am Mike Romali. I'll talk to you guys again some more tomorrow.